Hello everyone and welcome to LitFilmFest Live, where we discuss a classroom topic and a contemporary book to go along with it. And tonight we will be thinking about how to build a reading culture around your school by learning about horrible characters. And not speaking of horrible characters, quite the opposite, I'm joined with a very nice character. Hello Andy Stanton, how are you?
I'm all right, how are you?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's lovely to have you on. Would you like to tell us what you've written and about what you just brought out?
Sure. I've written loads of books. I've written George's Marvelous Medicine, Cat in the Hat, Crime and Punishment, Wasp Factory. Oh no, none of those. I've written. I'm mostly known for my Mr. Gum series. I wrote a series of books called Mr. Gum, which got lots of horrible characters in them. I wrote a really horrible picture book called Here Comes the Pooh Bus, but we don't discuss that. What else have I written? Danny McGee Drinks the Sea. I've written a book called Natboff, 1 Million Years of Stupidity, and another book called The Paninis of Pompeii, and they're all very, very silly, to be honest.
just off that title list, what's the limit, Andy? Do you stop at a concept or an idea, or do you just run with it and trial it out and see whether children really like that and write a book about it, or do you just go nuts because you can?
Well, I mean, if you stop with an idea, then you don't have a book, you just have an idea. So at some point, unfortunately, you do have to sit down and write the idea, and then you get a whole book. But yeah, no, I've got that's the hard bit. I've got loads and loads of ideas for things. Whether you turn them into books or not, that's the tough bit.
Are they just sticky notes all on the floor, just piles of just ideas?
No, sticky notes are in my head. I do write a few things down, but mostly the sticky notes are just, think of them more like wasps flying around my head until one of them grabs my attention. Then I go, oh, better do something with that.
That's a book. That's a book in itself.
Or maybe it's just a wasp.
Could be. Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us. Love Mr. Gum so much. Can be read to children of all ages. Oh, that's a great point. Was that something you had in mind when you were writing, that it would be available to a lot of different ages?
Well, when I wrote Mr. Gum, I love reading kids' books, and I used to read kids' books on the train way before you were meant to, way before Harry Potter made it okay. And I would, one day I'd be reading a grown-up book, and the next day I'd be reading a kid's book on the train, just because I was interested in how good books work. So when I decided when I sat down to write Mr. Gum, I just thought, I want to amuse myself and the kids, and you don't need to talk down to children. You just make something that people like, because sometimes people forget that children are people. But funnily enough, kids like stuff just like people do. Kids are kind of real people. So yeah, I just make stuff that hopefully entertains as many people as possible.
Yeah, great. And there's a real movement, I think, in my lifetime of children books having adult covers. So you see on
my kids, yeah.
Yours don't. No, yours are great.
Mine look more like that. Mine are definitely children's books. But the good thing about mine is that they look like just a kid's book, and then a parent or a teacher or someone starts reading it to the kids, and then the adults going, oh, I didn't realize they were going to smuggle stuff in that I'd enjoy as well. So yeah. But no, we don't need to bring out like an adult cover book of Mr. Gum with Mr. Gum staring gloomily into the distance in an industrial landscape or something. That's a bit more like your young adult stuff, isn't it? Like his Dark Materials and stuff. Well, we better do an adult cover, then we can sell it to more people.
Great. Laura's just joined us as well. Amazing, Andy. Watching in the new car on
my God, keep your eyes on the road, guys.
As she's setting up. Last time I hear Andy's voice, isn't he car? I can believe you're writing this in the car, Laura. We will listen to Mr. Gum. Oh, so the audiobook. I didn't realize you had an audiobook of it as well. Do you know who?
Yeah, I did all the audiobooks. They're really fun. Then I'll get to talk about do Mr. Gum like that. Shabba me whiskers. And then Billy William III sounds a bit like Ken Livingstone, but even sneerier. Yeah, it's fun doing the audiobooks. I had so much, and then we put loads of sound effects on them. I'm basically trying to sell you audiobooks for Christmas here. They're really good.
Was that something that you had to take on in a new way? It was a new talent that you had to hone to be a voice actor as well as a writer, or did you just know that you could?
It's astonishing that you think there's any talent involved.
Well, I
Well,
wasn't going to say anything, but
it's just no, it's just an extension. I know how all the characters sound in my head. If I hadn't been any good at that performance aspect, we would have got someone else to read them. But I know how to read them and what I like, and I've spent my whole life, you know, mucking around and doing silly voices with my friends, with my brother. So yeah, you know, lifetime misspent eventually turns into some sort of a career. Amazing, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and they're often the most enjoyable ones for everyone else to watch when someone clearly loves what they're doing and is proficient at it, which it's great to see, Andy. And which brings me kind of around to our question. You base Mr. Gum around a real horrible character. Why do we enjoy horrible characters? Why is that something that we want to consume and read?
Brilliant question, actually. Why do we enjoy it? Because they're safe. Because we can examine all the horrible things about life, all the scary things, and we can get a thrill out of it. But we're not actually in danger, are we? So you know, you can sort of paint this picture of all your worst fears, or you can you can put all these fears into one place for an audience, and we're just thrilled by them because we love to see. You know, we all go around thinking, what would it be like if I could just do anything and I was evil? You know, actually, that we don't all go around like that at all. That sounds really, really insane, don't I? But no, but you know, that's the attraction. You know, you go through life, you know, hopefully trying to be a nice person, but I wonder what it would be like if I would just off the hit. And you can see that played out for you by characters. I like that. You know. The other thing is with Mr. Gum, he's not just an evil character; he's a rubbish evil character, and that's always really funny. I'm going to tell you something a really good tip for your class and for any other kids watching this or any other teachers want to get their classes writing. I wrote Mr. Gum by thinking, I want to write something down. I'm sick of never doing anything. Where do I start? You know, and I accidentally, very luckily, hit on the idea of starting with a villain. Now, if you start with a villain, the other brilliant thing about villains or baddies in stories is that they always make something happen. They're really fun to watch or to read or to write, but they always make something happen. So if you start off with a villain always wants something. A villain always wants to, you know, spoil something or steal something, and you get a story going. So that's kind of the other thing about them. They're exciting, aren't they, villains? And then, as I say, stupid villains make me laugh. So I put all, you know, a really idiotic villain. That's the thing about Mr. Gum. He's not really scary. He's too stupid to be scary. He's his own worst enemy. If he's got nothing to be nasty to, he's just nasty to himself. Punch himself in the face or smash up his own possessions just because he's bored.
That's interesting that the villain is the driving force, so making them the main character.
Yes, I think if I were being very posh, I'd call him the anti-hero, actually, Tom.
Ooh.
Look, someone's asking about that. Have you noticed whether children want to write about horrible characters themselves? Absolutely. I think if you tell kids make up a monster, they love it. You know, whether that monster is a human monster like Mr. Gum, or, you know, just put all the nastiest, grubbiest stuff you can find into a character, whether you know, an evil character. They love that stuff. And you know, that's I probably took a bit from Roald Dahl in that respect, or was influenced by, you know, really mean, nasty, gruesome, grotesque characters. They're just funny though, aren't they?
Do you think part of that comes from that we're expected to practice being good a lot in school, at home? We're told to do that, aren't we?
It's like a safety valve, but that's a good question. That's what I was sort of saying before, but also, we're expected to be good in life. We try to be good in life, but oh boy, isn't it fun to just let your hair down sometimes and imagine what happens if, you know, there's a character who doesn't care about consequences. And then also though, it's interesting because humor is about that as well. You can, when you know, I write funny books, I hope you'd agree. And like that humor is a safety valve. You can write about serious things, but you can use humor to to make that stuff not so scary. And so that's like bad characters. Again, you often see funny bad characters. Those two things go really hand in hand. Kids love that stuff. Adults love that stuff. We're the same thing, just people.
Yeah, that's true. Laura says, again, she likes the details of Mr. Gum, like Bag of Sticks. And I suppose, do those details, do you think when you write them down, do you think they just add a lot to the character, like small things that don't matter too much? But
yeah,
people...
oh no, they matter a lot. They're all the little things build up. You have to make the world rich, or it's no world at all. So, yeah, you get something, and you know, Bag of Sticks, for anyone who doesn't know, is is Mr. Gum's favourite TV show, and because he's such a miserable character, I hate everything. He's, you know, naturally, my way of thinking, he would enjoy the most boring, joyless TV program of all time. So when
Love Island, yeah.
Sorry?
Love Island, yeah.
Love Island. No, it was before Love Island, so I had to invent something almost as boring as that. I invented this show, Bag of Sticks, which is a picture of a bag of sticks for half an hour. So, and it's funny though, because Bag of Sticks is one of those things that I put in as a little joke and a detail, and it is one of the things that people love out of all of those books. That's one of the things you get you hit a detail that just sticks in everyone's mind. So one of those details is there's a character called Friday O'Leary, and he's got a catchphrase which is complete nonsense. The truth is a lemon meringue, and you know, I'll probably that will haunt me for the rest of my life. The truth is a lemon meringue. They'll probably write that on my gravestone, right? But Bag of Sticks is one of those other things that just for whatever reason readers always pick up on that, and it's like, you know, just that little line is one of their favourite jokes. It makes me laugh.
Fantastic. I've got a big question here. How do you write all the jokes?
What a great question. Who's that from? Kate Elphick.
Thanks,
oh,
Kate.
My goodness. Where do you start? Firstly, you've got to have, well, how do you write all the jokes?
All the jokes.
Well, it's a big question. I'll tell you something that somebody very clever once taught me. I used to attend a improvisational comedy class where you'd go and learn how to make up comedy on the spot with people. Because I was interested in all that before Mr. Gum. And the teacher said something that I never forgot, which he said, jokes always take the story sideways. They never push the action forward. Because it's so easy to start talking about one thing and then sort of go, I had some cheese for breakfast, and then go into comedy about it and go, imagine if the whole world was made of cheese. But you've gone sideways. So the hard thing about writing jokes and going, oh, isn't cheese amazing? Imagine if you had a football made of cheese and you kicked the football, but all the cats chased it because they wanted, or the mice chased it because they wanted the cheese. See, I'm not really answering the question now. I'm going sideways and telling you about a football game where the mice are chasing the ball made of cheese. So when you're writing a book and putting jokes in, you have to keep the story going forward, even though the jokes are going sideways. So the really hard bit, Kate, is not so much writing all the jokes, but writing them and still pushing the story forward. When it comes to the joke bits, the jokes themselves, I just like to think of very absurd things. I just like to think of turning things upside down. Can't think of anything now. I like the sound of words. That's a big part of Mr. Gum. I use a lot of similes, and they're not exactly jokes, but they're funny phrases. So I make up things like, he was as friendly as toast, as silently as an avocado. They just sound right to me. They just fit. It's the sound of words that can be funny. It's the things that happen. It's the characters themselves. Oh, that is, Kate, we could do a whole 24 hours talking about those jokes. I want to know all the facts. This is from Kate's son, Tom Dance. Hello, Tom Dance. What a brilliant name. You want to know all the facts. How long have you got, Tom? Well, I was born in 1973. I weighed 6 pounds 8 ounces at birth. I've got no idea how much I weighed actually. I weigh a lot more than 6 pounds 8 ounces. But now, do you see what I'm doing, Tom? I'm making up jokes, but they're true. But I'm not answering the question, so I'm going sideways. All the facts. It takes a lifetime to learn all the facts, whoever you are, and even then, you don't learn all the facts. You learn about 1% of the facts if you're lucky. So that's a yes. Fantastic. Good questions. I love though. This is Tom Dance. So I want to know all the facts. All right, Tom. All right, Tom.
Ian is writing for his offspring, Lowry, age 8. Which is your favourite character and why?
My favourite character. That's a very good question. The one who makes me laugh the most is Billy William III, the butcher, but he's not my favourite. He's just the one that he makes me chuckle the most. My favourite is Polly, who is the heroine of the Mr. Gum books, And as some of you might know, Polly is really the sensible one. she's only 9 years old, but here's the secret of Mr. Gum. All of the adults are secretly just giant children mucking around, but then Polly is the only 9-year-old, is the 9-year-old, but she's the only one with any sense. So she's my favorite character because she's very loyal, she's true, she's brave, she's all the things I'm not. She's to me, she's the one who feels most like the character that I can be really, really proud of, you know.
Great. Kate writes good.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're happy, Kate.
Which is great. And Matt and Larry say they love Polly too. So.
They like it because I chose Polly. Would everyone like to hear me do Polly's whole name from memory? I don't know if
Polly says yes.
Right, so there you go. Polly is wonderful, especially her full name. I'm going to do Polly's name from memory to prove there's no cheating. I've got nothing written on the inside of my cap. Here we go. Dammy, Grammy, Lammy, for Hupper, Berlin, Stereo, EO, Lebsi, Mnemonica, Lestripet, de Grespin, de Crespin, de Spespin, de Vespin, de Whoop, de Loop, de Brunkle, Merry Christmas, Lenoir. That's why everyone calls her Polly for short. Now, I will tell you one other thing about that. When I started going out and talking at schools, which we used to be able to do before lockdown, remember that? Hi, Clement. I used to talk at schools and book festivals, and for a long time, I didn't know Polly's full name off by heart, although some of the kids did. So I think I was probably the only author in the world who didn't actually know the name of his hero. But I learned it over time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Which is your favourite goblin?
Andy, 8. That's a good question. I had a lot of fun coming up with the goblins in Mr. Gum and the Goblins. Then they come back a bit in Mr. Gum and the Cherry Tree. They're funny because the names are so silly. They're just such a big opportunity to make up silly names. I asked my brother. I asked my brother to make up a couple of names too. Not because I couldn't. I can. But I wanted him to do some as well as a little treat. He came up with Funk Whistle, which is fun. I think he also invented Liver Monk, which is probably Liver Monk's my favourite, the one my brother made.
Monks do have livers, so it's very facts again, isn't it?
Yeah, monks do have livers, but I mean, milkmen have feet, but they're not called milkman feet. But I mean, so it's but it's not really factual, Liver Monk or Foot Milkman, but it's just an absurd sounding mangle together of words. I think Liver Monk is my favourite, and then also he is the one when the goblins start to sing who always does a burp solo. So yeah, I'm going to say Liver Monk.
Fantastic. And what got you into writing? What was that process? Did it start at school? Was that where it began for you, or was that much later?
Is that one of your questions or an anonymous?
It is. You can tell because it's not. It's vaguely educational. Yeah.
Vaguely educational. Yeah. It's not just do the funny voice again. No. What got you into writing? Well, the first answer is always I love reading books. I've even got some here. I've even read some of them, and I always loved books. They were, I think, along with music and pizza and The Simpsons, books are like really my top thing in life. When I was very, very little, my mum used to read the Mr. Men stories to me every night. And I was really annoying because I was only about 3 or 4, but I would make her then turn over the book and she had to test me on the characters' names every night, you know? So I was obsessed with books when I was a kid, and I'm still obsessed with books. And if you like books that much, you tend to then, you know, read a lot, whatever else is going on in your life. And then some of us, you know, then get inspired. I can do that too. I can live in that, made up world. But my experience of writing at school was in primary school. They used to set us stuff to write, and I used to write pretty much the same nonsense I write now, except I was 8 then. And a lot of the teachers were really annoyed by how silly my stuff was, and then some of them liked it. And there was one teacher called Miss Yates when I was about 8 or 9, and I really fancied Miss Yates. She had nice earrings, and I was like, oh. I think I was trying to impress her and make her laugh. But if you did a really good story or a good bit of work, she would put a little blob in your book. She would give you, you know, you got a blob from Miss Yates. She'd draw a little blob. It was really good. Yeah, 2 or 3 blobs, or even 4. If it was amazing, like 5 blobs. So I was always trying to get blobs from Miss Yates.
Doesn't four blobs mean that you're married? I thought that's what the rule was.
What the exchange rate is now, Tim, but
Yeah.
I used to definitely want to impress her.
Great.
But but she was very encouraging. Oh, here's another piece of advice for anyone who wants to write, the kids you teach or anyone at all watching. She was my first editor, really, because she liked what I wrote. She liked the imagination. She liked all the humorous stuff. But she was the first one who said to me, hey, it can't just be silly all the time. You've got to put emotion in there as well. And that is one of the biggest lessons I ever wrote for writing humor. If you write funny stuff, it gets boring unless we also care about the characters. And Mr. Gum's no fun if he's just bad, but that doesn't mean anything. You've also got to see him affecting other characters and how they care about that. So you've got to do the emotion and the jokes and the story all at once. Put emotion in, even if it's just a silly or a funny book.
I think that's a good point, because a lot of children want to write, don't they? And particularly humor as well, and comedy, that desperate to make other people laugh. So to do it, having all those skills together is a really good lesson.
It's hard. People think funny stuff's easy because you don't have to do other stuff. No, you have to do all the other stuff and then put the jokes in as well. We are reading. Here's a question. Sorry, we are reading Panini's of Pompeii in class at the moment, and we love the Latin references. Caecilius is a bonkers character. Yeah, that was the last book I wrote. Let's have a look at that. Let's do a bit of advertising for Christmas again. This is set in ancient Pompeii, and when I was at secondary school, we had to study Latin for a bit, and we had to study from a textbook where the main character was called Caecilius. So later on, and that he was a real merchant back in ancient Pompeii, apparently. They found a merchant called Caecilius. They wrote this book to teach you Latin. Now, I was very, very bored by Latin, but years later, I thought it would be really funny to make up everything I'd remembered, which wasn't much, and then just make up the rest and turn ancient Pompeii into another completely stupid world straight from my head, really. So in my book, Caecilius is a fart merchant. He sells farts at the market. And then they've got a dog called Barcus Wutherinicum. And it's very, very, very silly. I apologize to all actual students of history. I really do. The Panini's of Pompeii will teach you literally nothing except about my brain.
Which is dangerous. Dangerous to go down that rabbit hole.
Dangerous for you. I've got to live with this.
Flora says, your books got my child reading independently because I apparently don't read them to him fast enough.
Well, I don't want to cause any family conflicts, but I think it's great, isn't it? If you people are always saying, how do you get kids into reading? You just keep showing them books until they find the ones they like. And it's fantastic that I don't know what your child is called, Flora, but he or she got into books through my books. I'm so happy. I hear it, and that's one thing I never, ever get tired of. By the way, as we talk, there are all these people remembering Caecilius Estin Horta, remembering all the lines from that old Cambridge, I think it was called Cambridge Latin textbook. But where was I? Yeah, I just love it when, a kid gets into reading who wasn't particularly into reading, and it's like a fire is lit under them, but not a real fire, because that would be horrible.
When's your next book coming out, and what is it? Speaking of advertising. That's
a good question. I do not have a good answer for you, unfortunately, Tom. I don't know what to write next. I don't think I'm going to write any more Mr. Gums in the foreseeable future, sorry. But you know what? I got a bit tired of writing a few years ago, but now I'm getting untired of writing. So I can't tell you what the answer to that question is, Tom, but I will write a book at some point, and probably it will be very, 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 very silly. Is this Tom again who wanted to know all the facts, and now he's going like, I want more books, I want this, give me £1 million. Tom, I'm scared of you.
The last fact. I must know.
Yeah.
Right, Andy, I think, is it okay if we take a short reading from you? It'd be lovely to hear a chapter of Mr. Badman. Would that be okay?
You're a bad man, Mr. Gum?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. Let's find that. Does it? Well, let's see. Oh, I have a copy right here. How
Here's one I wrote earlier.
how absolutely convenient. I'll give you a bonus chapter, or I'll read everybody's favourite chapter from Mr. Gum Book 1, which is called Chapter 4, Mr. Gum Has a Cup of Tea. Would you like to hear that first, Tim?
I'd love to. I'll leave you to it. I'll see you in a bit.
Oh, okay. Well, that one's not going to take... Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about because that one's only a sentence long. Chapter 4, Mr. Gum Has a Cup of Tea. Mr. Gum had a cup of tea. That's the chapter. I'll read you something proper. What shall I read you? I'm going to read you the first chapter of Mr. Gum. You're a bad man, Mr. Gum. Chapter 1, The Garden of Mr. Gum. Mr. Gum was a fierce old man with a red beard and two bloodshot eyes that stared out at you like an octopus curled up in a bad cave. He was a complete horror who hated children, animals, fun, and corn on the cob. What he liked was snoozing in bed all day, being lonely, and scowling at things. He slept and scowled and picked his nose and ate it. Most of the townsfolk of Lamonic Bibber avoided him, and the children were terrified of him. Their mothers would say, "Go to bed when I tell you to, or Mr. Gum will come and shout at your toys and leave slime on your books." That usually did the trick. Mr. Gum lived in a great big house in the middle of town. Actually, it wasn't that great, because he had turned it into a disgusting pigsty. The rooms were filled with junk and pizza boxes. Empty milk bottles lay around like wounded soldiers in a war against milk. And there were old newspapers from years and years ago with headlines like "Vikings invade Britain" and "World's first newspaper invented today." Insects lived in the kitchen cupboards, not just small insects, but great big ones with faces and names and jobs. Mr. Gum's bedroom was absolutely grimsters. The wardrobe contained so much mould and old cheese that there was hardly any room for his moth-eaten clothes, and the bed was never made. I don't mean that the duvet was never put back on the bed. I mean the bed had never even been made. Mr. Gum hadn't gone to the bother of assembling it. He had just chucked all the bits of wood on the floor and dumped a mattress on top. There was broken glass in the windows, and the ancient carpet was the colour of unhappiness and smelt like a toilet. Anyway, I could be here all day going on about Mr. Gum's house, but I think you've got the idea. Mr. Gum was an absolute laser who couldn't be bothered with niceness and tidying and brushing his teeth, or anyone else's teeth for that matter. But, and as you can see, it's a big but, he was always extremely careful to keep his garden tidy. In fact, Mr. Gum kept his garden so tidy that it was the prettiest, greeniest, floweriest, gardeniest garden in the whole of Lamonic Bibber. Here's how amazing it was. Think of a number between 1 and 10. Multiply that number by 5. Add on 350. Take away 11. Throw all those numbers away. Now think of an amazing garden. And whatever number you started with, you should now be thinking of an amazing garden. And that's how amazing Mr. Gum's garden was. Oh. There you go. That's what I'm going to read you for tonight. That's it. I'm going to stop there because I'm lazy.
I applaud your laziness.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. That was lovely. I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions about that chapter, if that's okay, Andy.
Yeah.
But everyone, keep your answers coming in. So Flora is also asking another quick fire question. Did you choose David to illustrate the Mr. Gum series, or were you matched up like a blind date?
Well, we matched up like a blind date. Yes, I took David out to dinner, and then we had a little bit of romance. We took a long time to find exactly the right illustrator, because I had a lot of ideas for how the book should feel, and so did my publishers. I, in fact, had done a lot of sample illustrations myself. And the publishers, Egmont Books, knew that they had to get the right person for it to feel right. So we took forever. So it wasn't exactly a blind date, but we found the right guy in the end, because David's illustrations are absolutely fantastic for anyone who doesn't know them, and for anyone who does. Mr. Gum on a skateboard. And David pays great attention to detail to his illustrations. So, for example, on this illustration, he was that is a proper skateboarding move. I can't remember what it's called, but it's but David knows, because when he draws for kids, it's like how I write for kids. We want to do it properly. So he doesn't just draw some skate. It's like that's proper. He does that all. Yeah. Anyway, there we go. Quick fire questions. Yeah.
Quick fire questions, right?
Let me put on my quick fire questions hat.
You can be as long as you want with the answers.
Oh, okay.
What do we learn about Mr. Gum from the first page?
Well, what do we learn? We learn there's a description of him. You learn that he's a very. You think it's probably going to be a silly character as well, because the language is silly, but it's grubby. You probably know that you're stepping into quite a weird world when you read that first line. Mr. Gum was a fierce old man with a red beard and two bloodshot eyes that stared out at you like an octopus curled up in a bad cave. I think you know that you're stepping into like a cartoony world, and that this is the baddie, bang, like that. And in fact, if you read the book, there isn't even a child who comes along into the story till about chapter 5, really, when Polly comes in. So actually, you know that you're stepping into this cartoon with a bit of a gruesome character.
Great. What did the townsfolk of Lemonic Bibber think about Mr. Gum?
Oh, well, I see. You wanted me to read the whole chapter so you could ask them. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We'll do it this way. What did the townsfolk... As you... In the bit I read, you could hear that Mr. Gum haunts the entire town. So, like, he's the horrible, horrible secret at the heart of the town, and everyone goes in fear of him, and they're all, you know, he's kind of like, yeah, he's kind of the spider at the center of the web, so they're all on tiptoes around him, except for Polly, the heroine, because she's too brave to be, to be cowed by Mr. Gum.
What does it mean that Mr. Gum lived in a pigsty? Did he actually live in a pigsty?
No, you silly man. He does not live in a pigsty. He had turned his house into a pigsty. Like when your mum or dad comes into your room and says, your room's a pigsty. Now, unless it is actually a pigsty and you've filled your room with pigs and straw and made it into a pigsty, it's just what we call a simile.
Simile.
No, it's a metaphor. It's a.
Oh, it was a metaphor. Yeah, no, like
the simile is like when you say it's like a pigsty, but when you say it is actually a pigsty, then it's a metaphor. So, like, if you say, well, you know this, I'm not trying to teach the teacher.
Slow down.
If you said a man built like a tank walked down the street, that's a simile, isn't it? But if you said a tank came walking down the street, that would be saying the man is the tank, but it's not. So if you live in a pigsty, it is a metaphor. It is just saying tidy your room. Mr. Gum lives in a horrible, dirty house. That's what that means.
Fun pointless fact, my mother lived above a pigsty for many years.
Brilliant. That's so terrific. Is that true?
It is true. Yeah, that is one fact that you'll find in this interview.
Wow.
What does it mean that Mr. Gum had newspapers with headlines like Vikings invade Britain and world's first newspaper invented today? Why is that important? That's
a great question, because it shows that Mr. Gum had... This is how you write a joke. Someone was asking earlier, right? It's fine to say Mr. Gum had old newspapers lying around, because that shows the pigsty stuff. That shows he's a grubby character, yeah? But it's not a joke. But if you say they were so old that the headline said Vikings invade Britain, then you've turned it into a joke, because that paper has to be from 1066, and that's ridiculous. But it's exaggeration. It's exaggeration. Exaggeration is a big part of humour. So what it means is it's an exaggeration to show that Mr. Gum lives in a pigsty with old stuff lying around. But it's so old that one of the papers says Vikings invade Britain, and the other paper is so old that the headline on that says world's first newspaper invented today, which is ridiculous.
I love it. Personally, what do you think the colour of unhappiness is on page 5? Right, so it says that Mr. Gum's carpet was the colour of unhappiness. I think sometimes it's good not to try and describe things for the reader, but to just give them an image to think on. I think we all know exactly what I mean when I say the colour of unhappiness and a carpet that's the colour of unhappiness. But I think we all have a different thought, but we all get the idea. So I'm not going to even try and explain that further. That's great. Leave the answer in the eyes of the reader. Love that.
And
Always a good get out clause. Nice one.
Yeah, well, no, it's like jazz, mate. It's like jazz. It's the notes you don't play, Tim. I'm not even kidding. I'll tell you another example of that is sometimes kids want to know why Polly's doesn't go to school. You just make it up in your head. Make up in your head what, the bits I leave out on purpose to get the book to feel different and unusual.
Yeah, and people don't like having all the answers, do they? And that's
people want all the answers, especially that Tom Dance I want all the facts. But if you give them all the facts, there's nothing more to talk about, or there's nowhere for their imagination to go. So sometimes you leave stuff out. It's fun.
Yeah. And why do you use lots of different fonts and sizes on your pages, specifically page 6? But why across your book do you decide to do that?
Yeah, I held that bit up when I read it, didn't I? But and as you can, that's for a joke. But and as you can see, it's a big but, because people are always saying. Well, it sounds wrong, doesn't it? Big but it's not that type of big but. People are saying, it's a phrase, and I turned it into a visual joke. But throughout the book, I also use different fonts to bring the words to life. Sometimes whack, and you can see that's written in like a cartoon, smashy up type font. And then there's other ones. I just like to sometimes paint the words up and give a different feel to some of the words. So sometimes if someone's talking, I can't find many examples now I've said that, but there are sometimes, here's one from the same chapter I just read. I said, Mr. Gum's garden was the prettiest, greeniest, floweriest, and we wrote it like that. The prettiest, greeniest, floweriest garden. And it just makes in your head, it's like, oh, I'm reading a lovely little children's book, a lovely little, and then it's just to dress up some of the words and make them get a different feel from them.
Great. Matt asks, could Mr. Gum be made into films? And he really enjoyed the theatre show, and so did Laura actually as well.
Oh, thank you for enjoying the theatre show. That was one of the best and most difficult things I have ever been involved in. Yeah, Mr. Gum could be made into films one day, couldn't it? But I am a big fan of only doing that stuff if it's good. I hate the idea of, saying to a film company, we want to make a Mr. Gum film, and it comes out and everyone goes to see it, especially kids, and go, well, that was really disappointing. It was rubbish. I love the books. I hate that. So I'm always interested in turning that stuff, the books, into other things, but only if we do it right, not just for the sake of it and not just to get some money. I do like the money. Bring me some money if you've got any, thanks. But that's not. But I'd rather have no money than make people unhappy. I really would. I hate that. It makes me go. I don't like being disappointed by stuff. So maybe we'll make a film of Mr. Gum one day, but only if it's good.
Who is telling the story? Whose voice is it?
Great question. So, as you know, that we're talking about the narrative voice here, the person telling the story in any book, yeah? And in some books, it's written from the first person point of view, where you go, the whole book is, I walked down to the supermarket, I bought a sandwich, I came back, I met the bully, I. Now, this is a third person narrator because it's talking about all the characters. It's going, he was doing that, she was doing that, they were doing. But what you're really getting at is that the voice in Mr. Gum, the narrative voice, is very intrusive on the story. And the narrative voice in my books often talks to the reader and says things like, well, that was a good bit, wasn't it? Are you bored yet? Or whatever. And sometimes, like at the end of chapter 1, which I didn't get to, I pretend to end the story early. It goes, nothing much ever happened. The sun went down over the mountains. The end. And then suddenly the narrator goes, oh, sorry, I nearly forgot. Something did happen. Oh, we better have another chapter. Who is telling the story? It's a version of me, as if I were talking to my little cousins or something, trying to make them laugh, getting distracted, coming back to the story, going off on another tangent. It's a very fictional version of how I think. That's what the narrator is.
Lovely. And just to extend that as well, I also thought the end of chapter 12 was important. Why did you finish that and then continue it? The end,
the end of chapter. The bit I just read, the end of chapter 1 on page 12.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Page 12, yeah.
Well, I'll read you the little bit that goes into it, because we were only about 10 pages into the book at that point, and then I go, I pretend that everything just wrapped up fine, and so it goes, and so life went on in the peaceful town of Lamonic Bibber. Everyone got on with their business. Mr. Gum snoozed the days away in his dirty house and did lots of gardening that he didn't want to do. And nothing much ever happened, and the sun went down over the mountains. And that's when you turn over and it goes, the end. Now, what I'm trying to do there is say to the kid who's reading this, you didn't expect that, did you? Your brain's just melted, hasn't it? Because you're 10 pages into the story and it's just said the end. I fooled you. And then it starts up again. So I'm just saying to kids, you know what a story is. So when I get it wrong, that makes you laugh. And then don't worry, I'm not going to get it wrong and really finish on page 12, because that wouldn't be much of a book. I'm going to pretend I got it wrong to make you laugh, but then we're going to carry on and I'll give you the proper story as well. So all I'm trying to do, Tim, is make kids think about what a story is, make them laugh, and make them recognize when normal storytelling has been broken, because kids know what a story is. So if you break that, they understand that, and then that delights them. And it delights me when I see people breaking storytelling as well.
It'd have been a good pamphlet, wouldn't it, if it finished there, Mr. Gum, the health and safety pamphlet from who to help you out with
I don't know what it would help with, but yeah.
And last question, very good. You're on full marks so far. On page 11, which word means lightly sleep? Looking at the individual now.
Oh, I didn't realise this was actually a quiz. Okay, you want me to remember?
Oh, you're allowed to look. You're absolutely allowed to look.
On page 11, which word means lightly sleep? Let's have a look. Well, house.
Correct.
Yes.
In which language?
All of them, mate. All of them.
All right. Yeah.
I think the answer you're looking for is snoozed or snooze.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. You can't test me on my own words. I know what they mean, or I wouldn't have put them in there. I usually know what they mean, I should say.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. That was a real joy to talk to you about making children's writing exciting and comedic, and yeah, really lovely to talk to you and see the man behind Mr. Gum and Pompeii, or Paninis of Pompeii.
Paninis of Pompeii. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Go check my stuff out. Go have whether you like it or you don't have it. Lovely to talk about books always, and hopefully, there's something of use for someone in there.
Yeah, you have a lovely website as well, which I've just got up. Lots of lovely books to look at, and the audio books as well. Lovely links to those. Is there anything that you're particularly pushing for Christmas that you think people would really like, or
I think people would really like a vaccine for Christmas. So, but if they want to read my books while they're waiting for that would make me very happy. And if they don't want to read my books, then that's all right too. But no, I'm not pushing stuff. I'm too old and tired to push stuff. I don't like selling things. I think they should just read if they like the idea of my books.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining, Sandy. And we'll have you on another day, I'm sure. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Tim. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, everyone, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for all of your lovely comments. It was so great to hear all of you today. Also, don't forget, if you are watching this on Catch Up, on the medium of internet Catch Up, you can like the video, you can share it, or you can comment on it, and you stand a chance of winning a special edition of Badman, Mr. Gum and Badman, which will be lovely to have you on. Also, please don't forget to check us out online, litfilmfest.com, where you can find all of our free projects. Lots to do with reading, where you can write a book review over 5 lessons with your class, look and delve into it, enjoy it, and then create your own vlog. You can create your own vlog to share on YouTube and show a love for reading and a depth of reading culture in your school, which is what we're all about. So check that out, please. Also check out all of our other resources, like our Quickfire Write series, which builds culture capital and gives your children voice as well. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Next week, we have a very special guest. We always have a special guest, of course, joining us. We have, our regular, a LitFilmFest regular author, Dash Roberts, who is on to talk about her sequel in the Sticky Pines series, The Thing at the Black Hole Lake, which is a cool take on Stranger Things for kids. I would say, like a mix between X-Files and Stranger Things, which is great. Really well written, and it's a really good actual buy for Christmas as well. So please tune in for that and send in any questions from your class, or we've had videos sent in the past from kids asking questions. If you want to join us live online, you're very welcome to. Just email us at info@litfilmfest.com and we'd be happy to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us, and good night, everyone.